Okay, it's time to start. Hello everyone, welcome to our today's session. Hope you're doing well. And first of all, regarding the recording of the previous session, some of you noticed that unfortunately it is trimmed for some reason. I'm not sure why. It means that the stream actually was stopped at some point during the session. And to be honest, I'm not sure why. Today I will check time by time if the stream is ongoing and hope it won't stop. Yeah. So this is the first thing. Secondly, so I received the Git repositories from most of you. Thank you. And so yeah, it looks like I received them from everyone. If there is any of you who has not shared, please share later. Okay, so this is the second thing, and so regarding what we do today and tomorrow, first of all we will check the potential solution for the task I shared with you last time, and then we'll repeat the concepts of Git and the version control in general. So just there are some of you who maybe don't remember something, that's fine. About Git, we will go through them today again, and then we will start with C#. So we'll go through the basics of C# again. Some details for you to remember. What do we have? How can we work with C#? And then we will go to the activities tasks. I will share the activities with you a little bit, these tasks a little bit later today, so then you can work together on them. Okay, so then let's start. Hope I have not forgot everything. So as you remember, last time we had a task where we can the task to create a program where we can enter the text. The text may contain the brackets, the brackets, braces, and parentheses. And the idea is that that the program should. Oh no, there was. Oh no, it's fine. The program should check if the brackets are located correctly. Yeah. And last time we did some kind of primitive solution which just simply checks if the number of the left brackets matches the number of the right brackets. Of course, this may be potentially the solution for some cases if the only thing we care about is that the number of the left brackets is the same as the number of right brackets. For example, we'll see that it works this way in some HTML cases, where the closing tag may be positioned at like one by one. So the only thing we care about is that for each open tag we have the closing tag. We'll go through these things in scope of HTML a little bit later, but so today we will check how can we actually write the program to match the pattern to check the cases where we have, let's say, this kind of bracket. I mean, if we have text, then we have opening brackets, then we have another bracket, and then the idea is that first of all we should close the brace. Then we should only after that we can close the brace. Then we should close the bracket first, and then we should close the brace. This is not the case again. As I said, we can check if we don't have such case, because this case would be incorrect. This case would be incorrect since, first of all, if we have the opening bracket, we need to close it before we close the outer bracket. Now we need to close the inner bracket before the outer bracket. So, and then we can check this case. There are multiple ways how we can do it, but this case, I guess the easiest would be, and if you remember that we can use some kind of collections, we can use queues if you want. In this case, maybe let's remember that we have such type of collection as linked list. So my group, we used it before. Again, we will have more discussions about collections a little bit later. For now, it's just for you the reminder that we can use such approach. And first of all, I will import the collection, generic collections, so I can use generic collections. Yeah. So how can we check it? The idea would be simple. We'll go through the text, and if we see the left bracket, we will put this bracket into our collection. So it means that we go through the text and then we see the left bracket. Okay, so then left bracket. First, then we go through the text again. We go next to the next characters. Then next character is, let's say, another bracket. Then we move on, and then we see the right bracket, and then we check if this right bracket is the last element of the collection. If it is the last element, then it is correct. We can close this bracket, and this is a good case. Otherwise, if the brackets do not match, then we already know that this particular text, the brackets are not positioned correctly. And then at the end, what would be the check? So first of all, we need to check if the wall check, and how to detect if the brackets are positioned correctly in the wall text. First of all, we need to check what I just explained, that the last bracket in the collection matches the right bracket we are currently on positioned. So we need to check all these cases. And the second point would be that this collection should be empty at the end. Since, again, as I said, when we get the match on the bracket, we remove it from the collection. So it means that at the end, for all the left brackets, we should have the right bracket. So this would be the approach, and then the solution would be simple. I will remove, well, maybe I'll just simply comment spot. Maybe let me remove this. At this point, you can check the version control. So then I will enter the text, and then I will first of all define the collection. So I will use linked list, since in that case the array list will not be the best option, since you know that, and we'll discuss again this a little bit later, that the arrays are not mutable. So it means that we can, if we want to remove the element from the array or add the element to the array, then we need to create a new array as the object. In fact, and linked lists do not use arrays, and they just simply link the elements, and means that if we want to remove the element from this linked list, then we can just simply, the program will simply unlink one element, and that's it. We will discuss the theory of this again a little bit later. If you forgot, that's fine. But so today we'll just have a quick reminder to you that we can use this. So yeah, this would be the linked list of characters, right? And that would be brackets. Some more people joining, that's good. So by the way, meanwhile, let me check if the stream is ongoing. And now it is here. Okay, so the stream's fine. I'll check time by time if it's still in place. So then I will create the linked list, and then simply every time if I'll check if character is the bracket or character is. So just simply I'll check all kinds of brackets. So then, and excuse me, and then that would be, so what was another type of brackets? Oh no, there are 3 types in that. So that's good. Then we don't need more. And then, so if the bracket is here, then I can add it to the collection. And let's say add last in this case, and we'll add this. So else if, so then I can check if the left bracket is the one we expect. So then I can check the left bracket. So, and in this case, oh, hold on. In this case, I can check. So if brackets get lost, that's the same as the character as the right bracket, just matched, then I mean it's fine. Otherwise, so if it's not equal, then we can write that in the console that the brackets are positioned incorrectly. And then we can close the program. Then I'll just simply write the return statement. Exit the program. So in this case, I guess the issue is that so no, yeah. So that would be to simplify last. Oh no, not find last. I need to get last. What's the command? No, so if I guess we need to change then the value. Okay, so then it's fine, and then yeah, then check if the characters are otherwise, we can go through the other characters, right? So and then if we, and yeah, so one more thing else, then we delete the last element. We remove last. Okay, that would be it, and then I can say that the brackets are positioned correctly. Okay, so now let's quickly check. Yeah, so please don't forget to use the code formatter. I asked my previous group to always do it when you submit your assignments, especially when you submit your assignments, because otherwise the code is not readable. Because remember that if we have this kind of code, it is much more or less readable if you do the code formatting. So it means that you, in Visual Studio, the shortcut would be Ctrl KD. So I will then press it here. So I will then write it in the chat. So that's the code formatter. Please use it before you submit your task, because again, this will be much more readable if you format the code. Since I see all the brackets, where is the start, where is the finish, where's the end of the corresponding section, corresponding statement, and I can easily understand the flow of the code then, right? So, and now let's check them. Okay, so here is my console, and then let's check some tests. So here is the text, and then we see that, okay, there is the issue. So let's check why. Check why, and that's because of the value. And let's quickly check this. Yeah, so here we add it, that's correct. So then let's, we can debug, but we'll use debugger a little bit later, maybe. Just maybe first of all, let's see the output in console. What do we have as the value then? Because we see it fails here. So let's run the program again. Let's close this one. Text. Ah, no, hold on. My fault. My fault. Of course, we don't need to compare this. Yeah. Of course, we need to check if this match, if the match is here. So then, what we can do, as an addition, we can write a new method here. A new method which returns for the left, for the left bracket, it returns the corresponding right bracket. So then that would be. So just in case you have any questions, let me know. Yeah, because currently simply checks, of course, that will be different. The left bracket and the right bracket will always be different when we need to find a match here. So then it means that let's say we have, again, our static methods. Wait, we'll use instance methods as well. In this case, that would be static char get right bracket based on the bracket provided. And then I can check. So if bracket is this one, then I return this one. Well, hold on. So else if this bracket. I need breakpoint. Then I return. Okay. Then I return this bracket. I can also use switch statement. We will use them a little bit later as well. And then for this bracket, I will return the corresponding right bracket as well. And also I will return just empty character. Of course, we won't have such case, but anyway, let's maybe return space. Okay, good, and then here we can check if right bracket is right bracket of the web bracket matches the current bracket. So let's check. Yeah, I will share this code with you, so don't worry. Don't just simply try to type this. So let's check here. Yes, the text. So now I can see that the brackets are positioned correctly. Then let's try again this. So let's say that we have something like this. Then this won't be correct. Right. So do you have any questions about this? This is the end of the solution. So we have linked lists, we have the collections. Again, in this case, we can also use queues if you want. You can also try to use other collections. You can use the arrays if you want, but I would say that linked list would be the easiest one to work with here. But we will go through the collections again. We'll go through the methods and all the other topics. So don't worry if you forgot something from here. Okay, but so maybe any questions? Let's see, Owen is typing. Then why we had to create again? Yeah, that's a good question from Owen, and that was the usual question also during the previous course. When and why we need to create a separate method. Again, if you, and then the answer is simple. So it's not like we must create the separate method. Separate methods just simply make our life easier. Because in this case, of course, in theory, I can just simply add another if, but I guess that you would agree that in this case, the code would be less readable if we add one more if statement here. So it means that we have if statement here, and so just imagine that if we add another if in between, again on practice, when you work with the code, then you will see that there may be long if statements with lots of inner ifs as an example, and then at the end the code maybe was much more less readable. So in this case, I use this this approach to define a new method. So just simply to make my life easier a little bit, not easier, but to make the code look more understandable and more readable. yeah, if you want, you can keep using, but suggest if you want to improve the readability of your code, it is better to create a separate method. Even here we can create a separate method for this check and also for this check. For example, check character. For example, yeah, we can do it. Why not? Then I can say static boolean check left, or I can so is left bracket. Then I pass character here. So name it as C, and then I can type this one, and then I can say return following boolean statement. Of course, maybe I can make it here. And then here I can type is left bracket, and I can pass character here. So you see the code becomes smaller. It becomes smaller, but the functionality is absolutely the same. Yeah, I mean, I guess you would agree that it is much more easier to read this code. Since again, I don't again why. So just to remember what we discussed in the previous course, it is so sometimes the main approach, maybe not the main approach, but one of the main goals for the methods, the existence of the methods, is that we want to make we want to write less code, and also as an addition we want to make the developer of the code to not care about some simple things or about how the things work. So for example, here I write the code, I use this method, and I don't really care about what is written under this method, how the logic works there. I just simply see the text is left bracket. So the name of the method makes sense. So I'm pretty much sure what does it do. I check if the character is the left bracket. So yeah, I see the name. I simply write it, and the code stays the same. It becomes more readable, and in addition, I don't need to write the comments because, for example, if I have some kind of complicated or pretty much complicated logic inside the code, so if I have the method, then the name of the method can simply be also used as the comment for your code. So it is also the advantage of the methods that you can name the methods in the way that you comment the code using them. So it's also quite a nice thing to do. So then the same we can also do for the right bracket. So that would be static bool is right bracket. And then again I will return the following boolean statement, and then here I can check is right bracket. Yeah. Also similar way. Again, but it's up to you to decide. There are multiple ways. But why did the first try did not work? I mean, the first try did not work because the logic was incorrect. Because the idea is that here we simply use the bracket, but in this case, you see the bracket will be the right bracket in normal case. Yeah, so it will be the right bracket. That will be the right bracket. But we want to compare if the right bracket matches the left bracket. And of course, if we just directly compare, then this will not. Sorry, not this, but this, of course, this will not be the same as this, right? But I want to find a pair for this right bracket, and that's why I add this part of code here, so I can find a match of the left bracket with the right bracket. So that was the issue. I missed this for a moment, and now I add this Again, in theory, you can write it directly here without an additional method, but the methods simply help us to also encapsulate some kind of code, and then we use that inside our methods. Okay, so are there any more questions about this?
Yeah, hello. I have a small question, very tiny. I was just looking I will try to explain in English, like quotation marks. We use, I will call double quotation marks for string. Like, for example, the brackets are positioned incorrectly. And I think previously I saw less examples with the words, I will call that single quotation mark. I'm not sure it's correct in English, but when you're using characters, and I wanted to ask, so in this case, character is not string, first of all, if I understood correctly, and in which cases we else use this single quotation? I don't know
single quotation,
how to call it.
We use single quotation marks for the characters and double quotation marks for the strings. So that's the difference.
And that's all. Okay. Thank you.
That's the difference here. Yeah. So this is about it. A good point. Yeah, please remember to use the right brackets. In other languages, I guess in PHP, for example, there are no differences when you use single quotation marks or double quotation marks, and I guess in some languages there are no differences. But it depends. It depends. Usually for such, say, hardware backend languages like C Sharp or Java, you need to differentiate them. Okay, so are there any other questions? And if something is not clear about the linked list, don't worry, we'll talk about the collections a little bit later. Okay, so good. If no questions there, then we can. So then the next one would be that we will go through the Git concepts again and the version control, because we and also you in your further courses, maybe not only courses, but your practical work, you will definitely use any kind of version control. Again, it may depend, because maybe I'm thinking about if I can explain this now or after the presentation, because the idea is, okay, then for Git, this is, I would say, but it also depends it depends on the area where you work. Most areas use Git, but some areas may also use different version controls. For example, I work with SAP systems, and they are based on the transport version control. So it means that the changes are moved into the transports, we call them. So this is the package of changes. So it simply means that the changes, there is the special transport, a special package where we place our particular changes, our particular files. They are placed in these transports, and then at some point these transports are released and moved to other systems. But in theory, that the approach would be the same as Git. So yeah, but again, same as with the transport. I just explained. Most of the systems use version control, and they are all pretty much similar to what Git does. But also for your private projects, like if you want to develop some kind of application or website or whatever you want, then or just any even not IT project, you can definitely use Git to work with the fast. But first of all, again, let's start with the version control, what it is in general. Again, what's the idea? The idea is that there may be more than one people from different parts of the world, who work on the same solution. It can be, in this case, that's application, but I would say it would be any solution, and not only application, but any possible solution. Even, for example, this may be the, I mean, also not IT solution. Like, let's say that there's a group of people working on the same project, and you, let's say, you prepare some kind of files. It can be presentations or Word files. No, Word files, I guess. Yeah, Word files will be more complicated. But I mean, just some kind of project where you have different files, and if it's if they're the text files, then you can also work on the version control, on these files. But okay, maybe let's go back to IT. So when you are in IT and when you work on IT solution, then on practice you have the files. Yeah. You obviously have the files, and these files may be touched by other developers from other countries, and maybe also from other companies. So lots of different people can work with the same solution. And then the idea is how this this whole process can be controlled. Yeah. So because there it can be multiple persons who work on the same file or on the same folder, and then how to proceed when there is the change made by one person and then it's not made by other person, then it needs to be controlled, then merged and distributed in some way. And yeah, how to manage this whole process. As an option, that would be that we do not directly, again, in theory, all these people can work on one solution in, let's say, in cloud, maybe it's located, or on one particular server. It doesn't matter if it's in cloud or on server. The idea is that there is the application stored. And again, as an initial option would be that the files are located there, and then all the people have the access to this application, to the source code of this application, to the source folder of this application, and then everyone can change it. And then the idea is that what to do if like this guy and this guy, they both want to change one file, or this guy is working on solution A and this guy is working on solution B, then one of them are making the changes, is making the changes, and then the changes resulted into the issues in the program. That means that other developers they're blocked. They cannot work on this particular with this particular application because it is broken now because other people do some development. And to escape this situation, we can use version control system, which does not allow the developers to access the application to make the changes in the application directly. Yeah. So there is one, I don't want to say filter, but there is one stage, I would say, in between the developers and the actual application, and this particular stage prevents the serious problems in between the code sharing and also code changing. So, and where do we use the version control? Of course, when we develop non-trivial, and I also say if we develop the trivial applications, then also for these cases we need the version control, which sometimes we may need to have the version control as well, even for smaller developments. So, for example, you want to save the version history of your application somewhere, or you also want to have the backup of your application somewhere, and in that case, even for Twilio application, you may want to use the version control as well. And as I said, there may be a situation where more than one developer work with the same file, with the same application set, and yeah, this may be quite serious. And also, as I said, we need to have the stage in between the developers and the target application, so that there may be the revisions of the code, and these revisions may be stored and also checked by the responsible person before the changes are delivered to the application. And I can move in time, so get the previous version of the code to have version history. For practice, this may be quite crucial, I would say, especially if something does not work. Then, and so let's say you have the situation when there is some kind of small, or say small go live, or the bug fix, or just a feature added to the production system. And so there is the product application, which is used by users, and then there is some kind of bug or the issue, and then if this issue happened after the push of the changes, then the option to quickly solve the problem would be that the changes are reverted to the previous version. And then the changes are reverted to the previous version. The developer can apply the fix. Once the fix is applied, then it can push the newer version again to the application. So also really useful feature to revert back the changes. And of course can do the parallel universes, so that these are the branches, and especially the branches are quite effective where there can multiple people work on multiple solutions, or you can use different branches even if you work alone. Then you have several tasks in parallel, so sometimes it may be quite useful to split these tasks into multiple branches. So, do you have any questions so far? Okay, and that was about the motivation, and then the keyword to remember about the KTI. In this case, I maybe won't go with other version control tools. Today we'll talk only about Git. And so the vocabulary, the repository. So that's the actual source control repository. This is the place where the files are stored. And so this is version control repository. Again, remember that later I will show you that we have 3 stages. The set your local computer, your local documents, which are stored on your computer and where you do the changes. Then there is the Git repository. That's the local Git repository where the version control is stored, and then where the version control is stored, and then there's the remote repository, remote Git repository. So this is the actual repository shared with all the members of the particular project, and developers who work on this particular project. Then there is commit. So it means that we staged all the changes. All the changes are packed into one place. I mean, we fixed the file A, B, C, and then the files A, B, and C. They are all you stage them all, and then you can do the commit, and it means that these changes will be packed into one, let's say, maybe package is not the best word, but maybe in one, you can imagine the box or the package, the group of the files here. So then this group of the files will be placed under one particular commit. Yeah, so they are all placed, and then next, these particular changes can be, so they are written, they are, let's say, signed, call them this way, and then after they all are packed into one package, then we can push them. So that will be the next term. And yeah, so we can also pull and fetch the changes. So pull means that we have the remote repository, and then we move the changes from the remote repository into our local directory where we work with the files. If you use fetch, then it means that you retrieve the changes from the remote repository into your local Git repository. So pull is like more long feature, I would say. Yeah. So and yeah, there are multiple types of version control. So the initial one was so-called centralized version control. It means that we work directly from the working copy with the remote repository remote server. So that was this is the central version control. Yeah. So directly we have our copy, and then using this copy we exchange the files in between our working copy and the remote repository. And this can be done from all computers, but then we mostly now use the distributed version control. This is what the Git is about. And then we have, again, as I said, we have three stages. Our working copy, so in that case that would be this particular folder stored on our computer. Where is it? Let me open this. Yeah, so this would be our particular folder, this one, so this one, and also this file. And so everything what is stored here is stored on our working copy on our computer, and then when we make the changes there, we commit these changes, and then the changes are, we stage them, so we mark which changes should be committed into one package, and then we commit them, and they are moved into the Git repository, which is actually again stored on our computer as well. So this would be this repository. This will be this repository, which is also stored on our computer. But what's the difference between our working copy and Git repository? Git repository is like more advanced technology, and it also stores multiple versions. And so there are also the version history stored of these changes. Of course, here we don't need this version history of these changes, and we also don't need to have some kind of technical stuff about Git to be stored here. So we only want the files we are working with here. So that's why there is another folder, and this particular folder stores basically all the main information related to the version control here. And then from this particular Git folder, we can push or pull the changes, okay, and fetch the changes to or from the remote repository. And in fact, again, as I said, in our working copy, we have the files we're working with. And then the Git is the folder which stores the version control. And in this case, these two folders are, I would say, practically, they do the same function. So they can be cloned. In this case, if you want to add a new user, what will you do? You will clone this particular repository. So it means that there will be another user which will actually get the copy of this repository, and then the user can fetch the can pull the changes from there, and then create the working copy and be able to work with the files there on the computer. Right? Do you have any questions? Let's see when is typing. Okay, question from when the working copies are pushed to the main repository. Okay, so they're not pushed to the main repository. Working copies are committed. Yeah, so we say that please add file A, file B, and file C to the package of commit. So these are marked, yeah, ticked. So this will be moved, this will be moved, this will be moved as a part of this particular change, and then they are committed into the local repository. So yeah, they are not pushed, they are committed. And okay, so on, are there multiple different files pushed, or the files are merged into one? No, they're not merged into one. They are simply tracked, and they're tracked as so just imagine the box. Yeah, you say that I want to put file A into the box, file B into the box, file C into the box. So, and I simply move this box to the local Git repository. The box is there. The changes are then there, and then from this particular, and then this particular box can be moved to the remote repository. So the files, I mean, are not merged into one. Yeah. So the files can be and files merged, and yeah, basically, when do we need to merge the files? The version control itself. I mean. So when you have, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point, and sometimes we need to do the file merging, but that would be a little bit exceptional case. That would be a little bit exceptional case, and maybe let's have 10 minutes break, and then yeah. So this would be there will be the topic about the merging, but yeah. So that would be during the next slides. So maybe right now I need to 10 minutes break, and then I'll be back in 10 minutes. Okay. This means that it's 33 past 7. Okay. So let's have 10 minutes break now. Okay, so yeah, I guess we can continue now. So regarding the merging is related to the cases where we have multiple, let's say multiple branches, multiple distributions merged into one. So, and the merge operation is, normally when we have this particular case where we have the file here, then the file is committed, and it goes to the repository. It is not merged. Why? Because before we can push something into the repository, we need to pull these changes before. So it simply means that if you have one file here, then you have the same file here. You maybe created it from scratch, or you have not the latest version. Then the program will ask you to do the pull first. Yeah, it will not allow the not synchronized version to be sent. So it means that normally when you edit the file before you start editing it, you need to pull it. Yeah, so that would be the normal case. Like the typical case would be that you have the remote repository stored somewhere, and let's say you share it in between the developers. So for example, my recent case was that I and my colleague, we are working on the same application. The application is stored somewhere, and then we had this remote repository that every time me or he, when we did the changes, then before we started doing the changes, I and he on separate computers, we pulled the changes. We did the pull operations. That means that we get everything, the latest version from the remote repository, and then the latest version is fetched. We have it on our working copy. Then we can edit it. Once we finish the changes, we then push these changes to the remote repository, so my colleague can have the latest version to be pulled. And again, remember, when you do the pull or push, you don't actually push all the possible files. Yeah, so you only push the files you staged. Yeah, and you also don't pull all the files because you may have the latest version of these files. So if you have the latest version, then it simply means that they won't be touched. Yeah, but sometimes, like let's say you have the working copy, is the file A, which was edited by your colleague. Yeah, then it is pushed there. You don't have the latest version of this file. In that case, yes, you may need to merge the changes, and sometimes you may have the conflicts or something similar. So we will talk about these cases, but I would say these are, maybe more advanced cases. If everything goes fine, then you should not normally have any merging conflicts. So yeah, then what is Git? Git is distributed version control. It's not centralized version control, so it has 3 stages, as I mentioned before. And yeah, you can handle any type of projects. Sometimes I use Git when I have the personal projects, like when I work alone there. I also use Git, so to have as I said, have the backup storage, and also to have the version control, to control the versions, to have the version history, and also there is one additional feature for if you worked or if you will work with if you work with Bitbucket. So it means that Bitbucket and Jira we talked about Jira a little bit with our previous group load. Most likely we'll also use it in our current course. And so in Jira and Bitbucket, maybe no, I guess not only, so Bitbucket can be connected with Jira, and the idea is that when you create a new branch, you can link the corresponding branches with the corresponding tickets in Jira. So it's quite nice feature to use. Yeah. So any questions so far? Okay. So then if not, first of all, how to set up it on your computer, you all know we need to download it, and there may be one step missed, but usually, so if you use the same computer, then this config is usually needed only once. So during the first doing the initial setup of Git, so you need to set up your global username and your global email. So once the setup, then you can easily work with Git. Yeah. So and again, what does it mean? It means that when you download Git, you have this Git executable command. So from any place, from any command line. So if it's git bash, or I can simply use, for example, cmd command prompt. I can also use Git commands here as well. So like any console. And also here, if I use terminal, here's terminal, slash b view, and terminal, where's terminal? Oh, here it is. So when I use it's PowerShell, calling function here, and then let's I need to set up it. But anyway, so in your IDEs you may have the terminals as well here, and that okay, here it is. Yeah, so you can also type the commands here, and then that would be the same as if you type git commands in git bash or in command prompt. You can type these commands everywhere. And as an addition, you can also use some kind of graphical user interface or any user interface. For example, from most IDEs do have these options. So for example, here you can, I guess let's try. I haven't used it for a long time, but let's try. So I can, I can't. Okay, maybe let's not spend the time here, but yeah, so you can use this interface. You have an ID, or in other IDs you may have it as well. But you most likely will have it as well. They're pretty much the same everywhere, but yeah, you can type the comments well. So regarding the comments, and regarding again also a little bit of vocabulary here. So as I said, we have 3 stages. So you have your workspace where you work, and then you can add the changes into the commit. You can also stash the changes, but a little bit different. So, but the normal flow, as usual flow, is that you add changes. So you point to Git what are the changes you want to move, you want to commit, to add to this name it as the package, and then so you can commit these changes, and then when the change is committed, then you can push them and they are moved to the remote repository. And then to move them back, so you can pull, and then you will directly get all the changes from your remote repository into your workspace. Yeah, as an let's say more advanced path, that would be that you first fetch from the remote repository into your local repository. So the changes are moved from there into your local repository. And then if you want to move them to the workspace, then you can call the command git merge or also git rebase, and then they will be there. Sometimes you may need to use hard reset. So this is in case when you simply, if you find that you overwrite everything. So this may also be possible, may also be needed, but that would be, I would say, less usual case. Okay, any questions about this flow? So this is the usual flow we use. Okay, if no questions there, then regarding the comments, first comment, what I usually start with is git init. That means that you create a new local repository. And so this is this one. You initialize it, then it means that in that particular folder, this repository will be stored and it will track the changes of that particular folder. So in that case, it will track the changes from the practical tasks folder. So then, creating a remote person server. So this is maybe so if you have the access to the server and you have the access to the command line on server, then you may need to use it. But yeah, normally on server we can simply press the button new repository or something like that. Yeah, and then you can clone the repository if you have the access to. So yeah, so there is one more command git. So maybe I'll add it here. That would be git mode. I guess that was git add remote, right? Yeah. So I usually mix up the sequence. A moment. Git remote add origin. Yeah. So sorry. Sometimes I mixed the sequence. So yeah, git remote add origin, and this is to add the remote repository link, I would say. Yeah, and of course here we should have the link to the remote repository. Yeah, so again, command, and then what you want to do with this. You can clone. So in case you clone, you don't need to initialize the repository, because in this case it will simply copy paste your remote repository into your local repository. Then you can pull the changes, and this is what I said, when you get the changes from the remote repository into your local repository, into your local workspace. Sorry. Yeah, I was a little bit confused that. Yeah, I was a little bit confused that we hadn't sent the message in WhatsApp, because I checked Discord. It's not here. It's in WhatsApp, and that's why I was a little bit confused. But yeah, so that's fine. Okay. So unfortunately, we cannot continue. Okay. So yeah, pull means that we go from the remote repository into our local copy workspace. Then we can add. So I usually use A. So it means that I add all. So if you want, you can also use git add for each file separately. Then you need to provide the file name, and then it will be added, prepared for the commit. And then you commit. You can use M to have the message, and so that will be the text where you can simply sign your changes in some way, and then you can push them after that. Yeah, so the status, check the actual status of the local workspace. You can check the differences using git diff. You can, yes, again, add remote. Name that would be origin. We normally call it origin as a previous. In this case, that would be the same. Maybe I will delete this, but maybe not. I will just simply name it like this. But yeah, in this case, we normally call it origin. We can also define a separate name for this, so that would also be fine. And yeah, and then we push, and we have git push origin. That's the start, and this is what we usually do. We also have the branches, but we will talk about the branches during the next sessions, not this week. Yeah, so that will be the example. Clone, change directory, get status, add all the changes, commit them, and push them at the end. Yeah, so what are the hostings we can use? I use GitHub. During this course, I also like using Bitbucket. So especially if you're working with Jira, then Bitbucket may be the best option, since, again, as I said, it has very nice linkage tools in between Bitbucket and Jira. So maybe later on we will take a look on how this linkage works and how it can be used. SourceForge as well, so GitLab and GitHub may be the most popular one. And in addition, you can find lots of different open source projects. Usually people just simply place them and share the open source code, open source projects on GitHub. So it's quite popular too. Yeah, so that would be it about the main things what we need to know about Git and what we need to know to be able to use Git. Do you have any questions?
Hi, yes, I have a question. So my question is, previous, you hear?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So the question is, previously I worked with GitHub and Git repository. In that repository was one solution. It was our final project. So only one solution. So my question is, as I understood how you previously worked with your group, that you have each of the person has repository, and in this repository you can add like several solutions, like I don't know, homework X, homework Y, homework Z, etc. And I just want to understand how it works. For example, I create some kind of small solution, whatever, and so what I just need to do, I just push changes to that one repository, and it will just be added, and then I can open new solution, create new solution, and I just push changes. It's correct?
I mean, yes. So you have one repository, you have one remote repository, and you just simply place all the solutions there you have. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's the point. But
okay, then basically only thing I can't do is I can't use clone function. If I will use clone function, I will get all solutions in, or how? If I clone the repository, which is full of different solutions, what happens?
I mean, you just simply will have all the solutions there. Because the idea is, but yeah, actually, I understand your point. It depends how you want to use Git. Because in this case, I say as I said, we can use Git as the simple place of storage where we can store the files. We can store the files. So it also means that we can store like 10,000 folders there, and we can just simply manage them. So like it. So I suggest to proceed in the same way I do. I created one folder, so this folder is used as Git repository, and then you place all the solutions there. So in this case, you don't really need to clone this. I mean, if you work on the separate, if you work on multiple computers, in that case, you may need to use clone, but then you get all the solutions, and that would be fine.
Okay, I got it for now. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. But yeah, so actually, I also understand your suggestion that in theory, that would be possible that you all work on the same with the same remote repository, and then just simply push the files there. Actually, that would be a nice way. But you know, maybe we'll have some tasks when you work in groups, and in that case, yeah, of course, you can use the shared. Let's see. But you definitely will use shared repositories. I'm not sure if there will be multiple repositories in one repository. Let's see. But yeah, that's a good point as well. Yeah, so that can be shared repository, remote repository we can share together. That will also be fun, yeah. Okay, so anyone else has any questions? Okay, if no questions, then we can move to the presentation. To next, again, in this case, regarding Git, I did not talk about the branches, because branching is, I would say, maybe a little bit advanced thing. What is not what we can skip using. So if we just directly use the Git to push or pull the changes yet. So if we don't split our development into several stages, but yeah, we'll later on talk about the branches as well. So okay, and then the next one would be the presentation about C#. Yeah, let's go back to C#, and then let's remember the key structural points we have there. So okay, maybe I will skip the agenda and objectives here. Let's start with the C# source file. Again, what is C#? That's the code what we can type in our C# programs. Yeah, that makes sense. And so how the C# files normally look like. So first of all, we have the decoration order. So using statement to include the packages, the libraries we want to use in our program. Yeah, normally we always use system because this is the main classes, the main data types come from there. So we use system everywhere and all the time. If I skip using, if I don't use the system, then of course the console will not be available. And what I need to do, I need to add system keyword otherwise. Yeah, every time. So in that case, since I don't want to use this keyword all the time, to escape using this, I can simply say that this will be used as the prefix every time, and then just simply all the classes and all the classes which come from, and all the objects which come from system library, they all will be used without system prefix then. Yeah, so and that's why we usually normally use using parameter. Static using is needed for the static class. And so, for example, from console, in case I want to skip using console keyboard, I can also use static using system console instead. But that would be maybe more advanced and not always the same. But in case you want to simply type write line instead of typing console, that would be an option as well. Why don't we do it? In some cases, we may have the duplications. Yeah, we may have like several classes called console or similar, and in that case, we for the other classes we then need to use the separate prefixes and separate naming for them, long names for them to distinguish them with this particular console class. Yeah, so be careful because sometimes we may have the duplicates in the class names and also duplicates in the method names. Yeah, so for example, here we have the method writeLine, which comes from console class, but the same way I can define the method write class in writeLine in my class, or yeah, let's say in my class, in this program class, and then we'll have the method writeLine there and writeLine there. So maybe let me create a new project, and then I will meanwhile do the same thing. Let's host the console application. Then call demo1. Select the folder. And okay, then we don't need to have folder inside folder. Just accidentally I created it once last time, but okay. Okay, so yeah, if let's say that I have the static method, static void, let's say write line, so I do something here. And so do some stuff here. So that is possible, and in this case, that's not the problem because if I write the method, and let's also pass the string. So in that case, I can type hello world, and in this case, the program will understand that this will call the method from console class, and this will call the method from my class. Yeah, so everything is simple and understandable. But if I say that I want to use static system class console, in this case, okay, in this case it will use this right one as the priority, and same as well. So it will use this particular method. Yeah, so be careful because it may have this confusion. Yeah, so if I say I can use the long name as well, so this will point that I use this particular class, and in this case it will also use this one. Yeah, so be careful. Be careful because you may have the duplicates. You may have the duplicates. It will not be the compilation error, but you may simply call the wrong method otherwise in that case. So be careful. So yeah, if you want to skip using some prefixes for the classes, you can include them. You can tell that you will use them, and this means that all the methods from this particular class will be included, and you can use them directly. Okay, do you have any questions? Okay, then the namespaces. Why they are needed? The thing is that when we have usual normal C# projects, then that would be the quite normal situation when there are the multiple classes with the same name. Yeah. So one class, one particular name for the class can be repeated in for lots of different files for lots of different classes, but they all will have the same name. So and then the question is how the program will understand, how the program will differentiate them. So and the solution will be that they are grouped by namespace. So what this means that you have the class name program, and it is this particular program class is located under C# school namespace. Yeah, so this is the group. It is defined as a group where you can place the classes. So it means that if you have another namespace, then you can have the same, the class with the same name program. Yeah, so that's why you need to declare the class inside the namespace. Usually it's the same as the name of the project. Yeah, so you see that if we have different class libraries, then we will have different namespaces. One moment. So if I so I can also access the program using the namespace, and if I want to do it, then that would be, I can also do the same. I can use namespace to then access particular class. So that would be, for example, if I have namespace demo1, I can use namespace demo2, and hold on. The problem is that this is, let's say that is public. And so we'll talk about the access modifiers a little bit later. And now we have class program here and we have class program here, but they now are two different classes, located under different namespaces, but they both have the same name. So namespace can help us differentiate these classes. So, and then the class decoration itself. In some cases, there's no difference if the class is public or non-public. We'll talk about the access modifiers a little bit later, but yeah, we need to declare the name of the class to be able to work with our code. So do you have any questions about the structure? Okay, questions, then we move on. So remember, we can have the comments. So we can have multiple comments, so it means that we have the starting mark of the comment and the ending mark of the comment. So inside there we can place the code. Yeah, then we can comment each line separately. It's called documentation comment. The comment that I mostly use. And so we comment each one separately. And oh no, sorry. If we have 3 marks, that means that it's documentation comment. And if we have two slashes, then we have the single line comment I mostly use. For the documentation comments, what are the difference between single line comment and documentation comments? Some exporting tools, they are developed in the way that they can extract the documentation of the code of the class. So it means that it will summarize all the methods we have in the class, all the key structural details of the class, and then using the documentation comments, these comments will be included in this documentation. If there are single line comments, then they will not be included in such documentation. But again, this is more technical, and this is related to the documentation. One really important thing what I want you to notice about C# is that white spaces and tabs are ignored by the compiler. So this is I won't say the key difference, but one of the key differences between such programming languages like C#, Java, C++, PHP, and some other languages like, for example, Python or similar languages. Python and also F#. Yeah, we'll maybe talk a little bit later about F#, but in such languages, tabs and spaces are also very important. Yeah, so for example, I work with one programming language called Advanced Business Application Programming, and there is, for example, such syntax. I have the variable, so say I have the variable name, and then I can let's say I have such syntax, and then I use this type of, I can use this type of syntax. Oh, hold on. No, maybe. So this type of syntax, and then I type something here. So I don't have the spaces. It means that in that case so this particular operator has one meaning, and if it is passed this way, then it has another meaning. So yeah, some languages are quite they have a high dependency on the brackets, but sorry, not on the brackets, on the spaces and tabs. But C# doesn't have such advantage or disadvantage. It depends how you call it and how you use it. But yeah, in C# there's no difference if you add the space or you do not add space. Okay, do you have any questions? Yeah. Okay. Maybe I will share. I will not show you the PDF file, but maybe I will show you the PowerPoint file, so you can also take the messages written here. Okay, so let's move on. The class. So every C# program should have at least one class definition. Yeah, that's the fundamental component. In C#, Yeah, so the class is the keyword, and I would say not only in C# but in all non-functional programming. So again, if it's C#, C++, Visual Basic as well, Java or similar languages, they all have the structure that they have the class and they have main method as the starter point, as the starter. Yeah, so then there's identifier, which identifies the specifies the name of the class to be defined. Yeah, class definition contains all the variables and methods. Yeah, so this is the topic related to the object-oriented programming. We'll talk about it a little bit later. So the key point is that almost all the main logic is located under the class. Yeah. Okay. The braces, so the braces in programming are, let's say programming in general, C# as well, are needed to define the sections. Yeah, so we encapsulate some kind of code inside the section, and then we do not allow this code to be accessed from outside the section. Yeah, so we encapsulate this and make the definition of the accessibility of the particular section of the code. Okay, and yeah, we also can group the code using the braces. And of course, if we have the left brace, as I said, we must have the right brace. And it's not only about the braces, but about all the types of brackets. As I said, and as we checked before, we had the program which checks if the brackets are positioned correctly. So the same as in programming, you cannot, so if you have the open brace here, you cannot place it, let's say, somewhere here or somewhere here. And so you need to follow the sequence. So if there is the one bracket open, then you need to first we close this particular bracket. Oh, sorry. So yeah, if you have one bracket, then first we need to close it before closing the outer brackets. And so inner brackets must always be closed before the outer brackets. This is really important. And yeah, so the main methods. Main method is the starter point for the program. It points you the logic which starts your particular task, your particular program. Some classes may not have main methods, and that means that these classes will not be used as starters or will be used as some kind of special other components. The main methods have the string, have the arguments, and yeah, as you remember, what does it mean? What the issue we have? Yeah, of course, I have a pop here. So what does it mean? It means that these are the arguments which can be passed to the program. So let's say I have an argument 1, and then I pass it here. That will be the first argument. And then I can pass the, say, the second and so on argument. And yeah, so how can I pass it? Quite simple way. I run the console program. I run the, oh no, hold on, I can't run it. Oh yeah, I need to pass it from here. Okay, then I will do it differently. Hold on. I can do it with a bit different way. So what's the case here? Hold on, yeah. So of course I have more than 2. Yeah, of course. Yeah, if I have, in this case, it's a little bit confusing for the program since it has more than 1 entry point. What is it? Okay, it looks like it's, there should not be this error anymore. Should write this here. No, it shouldn't have. Why this here? There's only 1 entry point. Okay, never mind. Let's then try to run the program. So when I say .NET run, I can run the program, and now it should normally trigger the exception. It should now trigger the exception. Oh no, that was, sorry, that was another app. That is another app. Let me, pardon, let me move to this folder. So remember, you can run the application using .NET run program from your command line. So that would be as an alternative to what you can do here. Okay, let me get the path of this particular folder so I can copy the path. And add this path here. And then I can run the program from here. So here I can pass the first argument. And I can pass the second argument. So let's see what will happen. Sure why it shows there's compiling issue. Yeah, so everything's fine. Looks like it's the error of Visual Studio. There should not be any errors. Yeah, so you can see that we pass the argument to the to the runner of the program, and then the argument is now placed under the args. So this is what I said. Every time when you run something from console, if you can run any executable file, it can be written on C#, it can be written on C++, on C, on Java, or whatever it is, then you can, or it's Git, for example. Git also has the arguments. So as I said, every argument is separated by at space. Yeah. So you have a space, and it means that if we add more spaces, then we, after each space, we have a new argument. Then this argument is passed to the program, and it can be used. We can read these arguments using this particular array. That's why we have it. Yeah? That's why we have this array. We can get the values from there. Do we have any questions? Okay, no questions. Let's move on. So yeah, the C# statement, that's the, we call it complete unit of work in C# program. So this means that this is something what is executed. comparing to the other objects, statement needs to be closed with semicolons, because this is what is executed. If we just simply have class, or we have namespace, or we have method, then that's the section. So these all are the sections which do not do any actions there. So to be able to do any actions, to define the actions of the program, we need to have the statements. And then the statements are used, and then the actions are completed. So, yeah, these are the statements. For example, bright wine. This is the one which uses the console, and it prints out the text to the console. And the semicolon means that the statement is over. Yeah. Means that the statement is over. Then the next section is the keywords. So the keywords are highlighted in the, so normally when we work in IDE, not in TextPad, we have the keywords highlighted. And what does it mean? It means that these are specific markers in the programming language which are reserved. We cannot define the variables the same way as we have the keywords. And yeah, so they are a part of language. So they are reserved and cannot be used as identifiers in the variables, and they may create the context. Yeah, for example, right here we have the class, which is one identifier. We have the public, which is access modifier, which has sort of a different meaning, but they can be combined, and we can create the context by combining them. The context of the logic. Then the identifiers. The identifiers, the names of the variables, the names of the methods, something what we can name by ourselves. Yeah, so it means that it's not what is provided by C#. Identifiers are provided by the developers. Yeah, developers define the names of these particular of the object, yeah, the classes, the variables, the methods, and so on, the libraries, and all these things, they are all defined as the variables. So there are several rules. First of all, we will later on talk about the naming conventions, since they are important in every programming language. But the naming conventions are more related to the style of writing, and it can be discussed, but some things that cannot be, and where we can't have any compromises, is the letters, the symbols, what we can or we can't use as the inside the identifiers. For example, yeah. So first of all, identifier cannot begin with number or any other character. It should begin with letter. Okay, so like in this case, we can start with 3. We can place 3 at the end, for example. But to be honest, on practice, when you have a real life project, please try to not use the numbers in the identifiers if it's not actually needed. Why? Because what I see usually, so when I see the code, usually there are such names like method 1, method 2, method 3, or class 1, class 2, class 3, or something like that, or version 1, version 2, version 3, version 367, or something like that. So at the end, that it may become a little bit confusing, and really not understandable. What's the difference between something numbered as 162 or same something numbered as 73? So what's the difference between them? The name does not actually help us. Yeah, so that may be the problem. And as I said, when you have identifier, and it doesn't matter if it's the name of the method, name of the class, and name of whatever it is, first of all, please try to find the name which will speak for itself. Yeah. So, and it will make code more readable. Yeah, then some sequence characters can be letters, digits, or underscores. Underscores are used, usually they're used to replace the spaces. Yeah, we cannot use the spaces in identifiers, but we can use the underscores instead. And yeah, we cannot use the key identifiers as the keywords, as the C# keywords. And keywords can be used as identifiers only when they are prefixed with the add character. And yeah, in C#, identifiers are case sensitive. There are some languages where the identifiers are not case sensitive. I know such languages, but C# is case sensitive. Okay, do you have any questions? Yeah, see Maria is typing. Why switch starts with big letter and strikes free does not? Oh, yeah, actually that's a good point. Because switch, this is the keyword. Switch is the keyword. Yeah, so we have a switch statement. Switch switch one switch. Yeah, so we have the switch statement, which is the keyword. Yeah, so we have some kind of text. Then we can switch keyword. Switch statement. Yeah, so remember case A, case B, case C. Yeah. So we'll talk about switch statement again. Yeah. So if you remember this, that's good. But yeah, so that's why we can't type switch with lowercase. If we type, so we cannot do it this way. We cannot say that I want to have the variable named switch. Switch. So I can't do it this way because switch is the keyword. Yeah. But I can name the variable switch with the uppercase since it's not a keyword. Yeah, so switch, which starts with the lowercase letter, is the keyword. Switch, which starts with uppercase letter, it's not a keyword. Yeah, you can also type it this way, so that will also be correct. Yeah, so in C#, from technical point of view, it doesn't matter if the name starts with uppercase or it starts with lowercase, but if it matches the keyword, then it is not allowed to be defined this way. Yeah. That's good. Yeah, that's a good question, Maria. What else? And yeah, so this is about from technical point of view. As I said, and we'll discuss it a little bit later, there are the naming conventions in all the programming languages, and naming conventions actually also include the statements about what can be, how the variables should be named, how the methods should be named. Should we start with uppercase or lowercase letters? So there may be a difference there as well. And that it depends on the naming conventions. We'll discuss them a little bit later. So, for example, for the methods in C#, we name the methods starting with the uppercase letter. The methods start with uppercase letter, but the variables normally start with the lowercase letter. Yes. So this is why switch is incorrect, since this is the keyword. It can be used as identifier, but switch with uppercase is correct. That's the difference. Yeah, then there are the literals. So this is the way in which the values are stored in the variables and they're represented. Yeah, so what are the types of the literals? They can be numeric, there's no integer. Real literals, I won't agree that we can actually store the real numbers, for example, because some real numbers, no, I don't think that. In C# there are the, for example, square root of 2 or square root of 3 or pi or e numbers. I mean, A or constant, they are not rational numbers, they are irrational numbers, so so it means that they have endless number of characters. And so in that case, from mathematical point of view, I won't really say that C# or any programming language can actually store endless number of fractional characters. That's why I'll say it has integer literals and rational literals, means that these are fractional numbers, which have limited number of the characters after them. That's the point. But yeah, that's maybe more mathematical. Let's maybe not go deep here. We can consider them as real numbers, since of course we don't need all these endless fractional numbers. Usually we don't need them, but yeah, so we can use them as they are. So we have Boolean, true or false, and we have characters. So usually these are the single characters or the strings, as the text is. So, and yeah, we define the variables. So we work with the variables. So this is the place where we can define and store our particular variable, our particular value. So like we did it with our previous program where we stored the character. Yeah, so we had this ch character to store it during the execution of the program. Yeah, so the place where we need to store the value. Yeah. About the definition, we can use var, we can use directly the type. So when we take a look on JavaScript a little bit later in this course, you'll see that in some programming languages we can not really type the, for example, in JavaScript it's not possible to type the type of the variable we want to define, since because of some specifics of JavaScript. And C# also use this particular approach of defining the variable using var. However, comparing to JavaScript and C#, it is possible to define the variable with the name. Like in this case, we can define it as integer x equals 5, int x equals 5. And we also can, as an alternative, we can also use var. In this case, both options work the same way. They are the same for the compiler as well. Since in this case, we simply say that please declare the variable x, which should have which will be typed the same, which will have the type the same as the source yeah, I usually name it, like if we have an assignment operator, I usually name it as we have the source variable and we have the source and we have the target. So this would be the source from where we want to pass, and this would be the target. Yeah, and mostly call them call these two elements this way. Yeah, source and the target. Yeah, I prefer. For me, it sounds quite understandable. Yeah, so it means that simply the target variable will have the same type as the source value has. So that's the point. Okay, any questions? I see Alan is typing. Yeah. So any questions we can ask? And yes, on that case, there is nothing confusing for the program, since in C# all the variables and all the objects are typed. I don't recall this name. How was it? Not statically typed, but I forgot this term. They are typed with the exact type, so it's not possible that they have some imaginable type, as for example it can be usually it is in JavaScript, and it also is that it may be also dynamic in PHP, for example, or a similar language, but in C# it is quite straightforward, since 5 is the value and it will be passed to x, and x will also be the integer. The same if I pass from one variable to another variable, the source variable has its exact type. That means that the target variable will also have the same type. So the question from Alan, does it mean that in theory we can write the wall code using just var? Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. But the thing is that what you can't do, I can't, for example, define integer number that way, and then I can use it somewhere in the middle of the code. But I cannot define var this way, since it doesn't make sense, because at that point the program will not understand what kind of type to be assigned to a. Yeah. So that's the difference. That would be one difference. So in theory, we cannot write the whole code using var, because in this case the type is not recognized by the program. The program does not work, and yeah, also we cannot do it this way. Yeah, we cannot also define the parameters, since it also results in a situation that where the type is unknown. Yeah, so var is just the simple. It simply makes the code shorter. It simply makes it a little bit easier for us. These are called inline decorations. Okay. They're called inline decorations, so it simply means that we don't care about the type. We just simply type them as var and proceed with them as they are. Yeah? So that actually makes our life a little bit easier. Because again, for this case, okay, it's maybe not the problem. I know that this is the string. I know that this is the integer, but on practice, we may have the complicated flow of the program where, let's say, at some point you have, let's say, maybe hundreds of lines of code, and at some point you need to add your particular type or your particular section of code, and you have, let's say, on the right side you don't have the integer, but you have the variable, which let's say it is the object or some kind of structure or something similar. You can save a little bit of time using the var instead of searching for the type of the variable which is on the right side, which is the source variable. Yeah, so this maybe I will not write the program. I'll quickly maybe display it in Notepad. where the advantage may be colon e resize. Let's go. So the thing may be, let's say you have the program somewhere, you have program here, you have program here, and let's say you have hundreds of lines, and at some point you need to add the code. You have the variable, let's say some kind of say my object or something like that. Yeah, so the variable is defined somewhere there, it is used. So, and I want to define a variable. So let's say my variable, I pass the type of the object, and it means that this variable will have the same type as my object is typed. One thing, again, we'll talk about it in object-oriented programming, but the thing is that, okay, maybe I will, okay, maybe let's quickly, let me quickly mention this. Remember that when we have the objects, yeah, we pass the reference, we don't pass them, and we have we pass something from one variable into another variable, and these variables are typed as the classes, so they store the references of the object. In that case, we pass the reference of the object. We don't pass the variable. So in theory, we may have a situation when the variable is stored under the the object is stored under the variable typed as the parent class of that particular object, and in this case, again, we pass the object, and the object will still have the reference of the object will still have the same type as it was on the creation. But when we use this var, in such case, then we define a variable. So it will not look on the mysterious object typed stored under this variable, but it will still be defined in the same way as this particular variable is defined. Yeah, so again, we'll talk about object-oriented programming a little bit later again, but in this case, please remember that such thing will follow the rules of the simple programming, not the object-oriented programming. So yeah, and again, the key purpose would be that you have, let's say, a long code, you don't want to search for, or let's say that you want to define some variables and you don't want to check the type for each of them. So instead you can just checking the stream. Okay, the stream is ongoing, so should not be any issues again. Yeah, shouldn't be any issues again. Okay, quickly double check. Stream is ongoing. Hope there are no any issues. It's a Saxon connection. It's frozen a little bit. So just for you to know, it looks like this. So it's frozen a little bit. Not sure why. It's frozen. I hope the stream is still ongoing. Or it's just my computer froze. What's going on? So let's quickly double check if the stream is still. The stream is still ongoing. Question for a moment. Let me quickly double check. Okay, looks like the stream is still ongoing. One moment, I'll quickly double check. So we will not result in the situation as we resulted the previous time when the stream was. Okay, it is okay. Everything's fine. Thank you very much, Arina. Yeah, so because again, last time the stream suddenly stopped. because of no reasons, not sure why. Okay, thank you. Then stream is still ongoing. That's really good. Okay, the question from Maria: does VR type take the same place in memory like all the other types combined? VR is not a type. Yeah, so please remember that VR is not the type. VR is just the identifier. The identifier which actually tells compiler, please define this. So actually, what happens here? So remember what the programming code means itself. Programming code is the text you write, and then this text is taken by the compiler. Compiler reads this text, it translates this text. Yeah, so let's say we have text demo to program write one hello world. So the compiler translates it in the way that please use the class, use the namespace demo. Then please take the class program, then use the method of the class program and pass the text hello world to this particular method. Yeah. So this is what actually we are when we write the code, we are communicating with the compiler, which then translates this code into the assembly, which is then translated into machine code. So we provide the comments to it. And here, when we write it this way, we say, please define the variable text, which should be typed as string, and assign the variable, assign the value text to this particular variable text. So what happens in this case? The program will create a place in the memory where this particular variable will be stored. So, and it will be typed as string. So what happens in this case? In this case, we ask the program to please define the variable. Please define a variable text, which should have the same type as the value provided. Not the as in this case, that's not the variable, as the variable or the value provided on the right side. As a result, what will happen? Text will be defined. In the memory, it will be defined as the variable which will have types. Again, we'll have to type string. Yeah, so in both cases, in this case and this case, at the end of the day, we'll have the variable text, which will be defined as string in memory. Yeah, so in this case, the only difference is that the compiler checks the type of the variable or the value on the right side, and then this type is assigned to this particular variable. So it's not a specific type. It's not in some programming languages there is such type called any, and this is a little bit more specific type. But VR, it's not the type. It's just simply way of declaration. Yeah, if we define it as the VR, it will still be the string. So the only difference is how we are actually we as the developers, how we are communicating with the compiler. Yeah, so compiler does understand both options. Yeah, so for compiler, both options will be understandable. The only difference is how we communicate with the compiler. Yeah, so these are actually the equivalent ways of communicating. Yeah, so the same as we have in life. Yeah, we can do the same actions in the different ways. Yeah, or we can say the same things in different ways, or we can ask the same things in different ways. The same is here. We'll just simply use different type of communication with the compiler. In theory, what would it mean? I'm not really sure about, but this, if we use VARs, this may make the compilation a little bit slower. but on practice this should not be the issue. Yeah, all the program code should normally be compiled very fast. But yeah, so this is actually the way how we communicate with the compiler. But at the end of the day, they both will be defined as string variables. Okay, do you have any questions? Any questions about this? Okay. Yeah, and there are two different data types, categories of data types. The easiest one is the value types. So these are directly the values, mostly integers, characters, booleans. Strings are not really, actually, no, strings are also not really done. A lot of them are reference types. Reference types are used for the objects. Yeah. So it means that when we describe the, let's say, the character or the integer or something similar, then we describe it as the value. When we have something more complicated, like the object, computer, or something similar, whatever it is, then we can describe this particular type as the reference type. But today's like today's more theory session, but yeah, so let's maybe go through this theory and then we will. Next part would be that we will move to the activities after that. But yeah, so let's take a look on the system library, how the system looks like. So we go to the reference types. So all the reference types are actually inherited from the object class. But so in fact, from C# perspective, all the data types are reference types, comparing to Java where there are some primitive types. In C#, all the data types are considered as the reference types, but we can say that in C# the value types is a specific subset of the reference types. Yeah, so this specific group which actually is which has the types which are inherited from the value type class and also from enum class. Yeah, so all the other types are the objects, the types which are not inherited from enum or from value type. Yeah, so for example, integers, like it's int 32 or int 64 or float or double, they all, or boolean, they all are value types. We all say that they are value types. On the other hand, we have the objects. Yeah, so all the classes we define, they are all the objects, and also string, the arrays, they all are the objects. So so the easiest way how we can describe the difference between them, value types is something what is, let's say, what is simple, and reference types describe something what is not simple. And so it's more complicated. It's like the combination of the value types, of the combination of the components typed as value types. That's the difference. That's the difference. So it's like more complicated components. Like we have the class. The class has the attributes. So the attributes have specific types. So it's the combination. Also the methods. We all combine them into one. So this is also considered as the type. And yeah, this is, it's called the reference type. Why it's called exactly reference type? Because actually from the memory perspective, we have this particular pointer which points on these exact components. But okay, yeah, so do you have any questions so far? Okay, then yeah, so this is how we differentiate the data types, value types, predefined types such as integers, real numbers. I don't really like this because yeah, practice from the mathematical point of view, computers do not store real numbers, but yeah, so we can say that these are real numbers, booleans, characters. Then user-defined types as enumerations or structures. Yeah, they're also the value types. Actually, with our previous course, we did not really use the enumerations or structures. We will maybe use them a little bit later. But in fact, we can achieve, for the structures, we can achieve the functionality of the structures using the classes. So this may be quite similar, I would say. But maybe let's talk about this a little bit later. Pointers. They are not really used. Maybe we'll talk about pointers a little bit later. So this is not as wide as value types and reference types. And for the reference types, these are all the objects, all the classes we defined, and also the strings, interfaces, classes, arrays, and also delegates. So this is how we group them. And the value types, again, as I said, they can be split into different groups: booleans, yeah, numerics, and characters. And so numerics can be, as I said before, can be split into the deeper sections, like floating, decimals, and signed or unsigned types. This means with minus sign or without minus sign. And yeah, so if we talk about integral data types, then we can take a look on the actual type and the range they have. Yeah, so we can have long integer, which has a wider range of the values. It all depends on the size. And so the usual integer is signed with the size is 32. By bit integers for the long integer, it has 64 bits. And for unsigned, it means that the range is twice as big as the signed integers, because for signed integers we just have this direction both ways, so positive numbers and the negative numbers. And so in total, it means that if the integers are unsigned, then we can just simply take this range from the negative numbers and simply place them to the positive numbers. Okay, that's why the size remains the same, but the range is twice as big because the negative numbers are not included. Yeah, so do you have any questions? And yeah, based on the range you want to use, you can define what variable type what integer type you want to use. Yeah, so of course, if you have a small range, then of course it's better to use byte, since it's smaller, it takes less place in memory. Yeah, so that's why if you're fine, you better use smaller data types. Yeah, so and then we go to the floating points. So these are more advanced, since in fact the size of them can be the same as the size of the integer numbers. However, the mathematical size of these numbers is of course less. But in theory, but in programming, we need to store all these digits, and of course it takes the place in the memory. And so again, from the mathematical point of view, like if we have this number 3.4, like minus 3.4 02823 and whatever is next, then from the mathematical point of view it's just minus 3 point something. Yeah, so something really small, something approximately minus 3 point something. But from the computing point of view, we need to store all these digits, and of course from the memory point of view it will be as heavy as if we store it will be even more heavy than if we store the same digits without minus and without dot. Yeah. Yeah. And there are two types, float and double. The difference is the size. Yeah, the size for double is larger than the size for float. So yeah, it means that float can store 7 digits and double can store 15 on 16 digits. And floating point types support special value known as NAA, not a number. So it is used to represent results of operations such as dividing by 0. So we can define by in this case, from computing point of view, we can divide by 0 and then get the value which is typed as not a number as an option. Do you have any questions? So maybe today let's finish with the value date types, and then tomorrow we'll continue with the upcoming topics. So the decimal type, so that's the high precision 128-bit data type. So we mostly use for financial and monetary calculations. It can store the range of this number, I will not pronounce it. And to specify decimal type, we need to append m at the end. Yeah, so if we append m, then it means that the value is decimal number. So this is about the numerical data types. Regarding the Boolean types, yeah, the Boolean type is, I would say, the most simple value type, since it has only two possible values, true or false, and it is so in C and C++, Boolean is stored as 0 or 1. So 0 means false and 1 means true. But in C# the only values which satisfy Boolean, they are true or false. Same as in Java, so we cannot assign 0 or 1 to Boolean in C#. Yeah. So, and mostly Booleans are needed for the logical expressions to determine if the condition is true or false, or one particular statement is true or false. Then the next one is the character types. So they are defined as char, and they store one particular. So the variable can store one particular 16-bit Unicode character. Yeah, so it can be any letter. It can also be the digit. It can be any Unicode characters. So you can check them. Usually, you can check them online. Yeah, if you want more specific types, you can simply check them somewhere in internet and you can usually find the tables, use them, so you can take the character from them and use them in the code. So it can be any specific character which may be not seen on your keyboard, but yeah, you can find the Unicode of it and type it under the character. So yeah, there is another data type called structures. So these are also value types. So it simply means that we can define the structure, and then we can define the elements of the structure. So yeah, it simply means that we have the variable, or sorry, not the variable, but the type, which then can contain other types inside. So in theory, that would be the same as in the classes, we have the attributes, and then for the structure, these attributes can be stored as well. The only difference is that for the classes, we need to have the objects to use them. For the structures, we don't need to create the objects. We can just simply directly define them variable as the structure, and then we can access the elements of this structure. Tomorrow we'll take a look on some examples. Yeah, so here, for example, here we have an example. We have the structure student. So it means that we have that variable defined as student, and then we can access the elements of this particular variable. Yeah, so that would be structure, that would be the name. And so we can assign it and access it, and it can also be roll number, like in that case. And also the last one is the enumerations. And so we can define the enumerations. So enumerations are the specific constants what can be used, and then these constants have the values. So for example, in that case, we have the enum shape. So it means that we have three. In this case, we have three colors, and for each particular color, we have the mapping with the integer number. So what does it mean? It means that we can, in fact, we can use them as the constants to then use these constants inside our code. Yeah? So instead of, let's say, just if we have somewhere in the code we have to pass the color, so and the color is actually passed as integer. So instead of directly passing it as the integer number, we can use the enum, where we have this particular constant, to then make the code more understandable and readable. So, do you have any questions? It looks like it's a wait for everyone. So okay, if there are no questions, then I think for today we can stop. If you have any questions for tomorrow, you can prepare them, and then we can maybe discuss these questions together tomorrow during the session. And we also have some examples tomorrow, and I hope that we'll finish the presentation tomorrow, and then we will focus on the practical activities. I will share with you. So I will also share the presentation about Git with you. And yeah, then tomorrow I will share them. Yeah, I will push the code into the remote repository, so you can all take a look on it there. And yeah, so if there are no questions, then thank you very much for your attention today, and see you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye.